All right, and we're back. It's another Neville and Chill. It is a solo stream tonight, and we're going to be taking a dive deep into the world of multidimensional reality. We're going to keep it real chill here tonight. In fact, I'm going to have a little background music just to keep that vibe going. Yeah, it's really good. Welcome everybody who is joining me on the live stream tonight. I titled this live stream The Polyverse because Neville and Chill is all about exploring conversations that we don't really have in other spaces. And I'd like to think of Neville and Chill as really satiating the sapio part of ourselves, meaning the part of us that is really satiated by intellectual stimulation. And tonight we're going to do exactly that. We're going to stimulate our intellect. And we're going to really explore multidimensional reality. And we're going to talk about something in particular that I only just became aware of recently called the Polyverse. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. Welcome everybody who is joining me live. Drop your comments. We will keep it interactive as we go. I see we have Jackie. Hello, Jackie. Longtime participant in the sapio environment of Neville and Chill. We have Orlena. Hello, Orlena. We have Oksana. Greetings. And yeah, okay. Roxy style. How we feeling, everybody? Roxy style. Hello, hello. And Griffin. Welcome, Griffin. I don't think I've seen you on Neville and Chill before. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Okay. I'm testing. Might have to switch up until we find the right one. Let's see. I figure we need a little bit of a soundtrack if we're going to take a journey in this way. Oh, that's nice. Okay. And Stasio. Hello, Stasio. Okay. So I have really deeply enjoyed the guests that we've had here on Neville and Chill over the past couple of sessions. Shout out to Tamer and Angela for just joining us and giving us such an amazing magic love story. I found their deep dive, long form interviews, just their stories, evolution, their personal journeys, to be absolutely fascinating. And I've gotten such wonderful feedback from members of the community as well. And we're going to do more of those going further. In fact, we're going to have Tamer back. I think it'll be in the next Neville and Chill. We're going to have Tamer back, and he's going to talk specifically about consciousness technology. It's what he does for work. He's very deeply into the biohacking space and has not only done like marketing and promotions and demos and everything else, but also assisted in the development of some of this very fascinating, cutting edge, advanced consciousness technology that I've had the pleasure of playing with at least a little bit myself. So he's an absolute wealth of knowledge about these things. And I'm looking forward to having him just for a Neville and Chill session, just to talk about that. I think that'll be really satisfying also, just to learn about some of the cutting edge consciousness technology that's coming out. And then we have a couple other people coming on as well. Frank, who is a long time, really since the beginning. Frank has been with us. He shows up in the chat, but also he's been interviewed, and we've had conversations multiple times in Neville and Chill. Frank has gone through really a shocking transformation. And I don't want to spoil his story, but he has had something amazing manifest in his life since last we had him on. So we're going to have him back on to tell that story and to share the wisdom and the insights gained through this bridge of incidents. It's really quite amazing. He's kind of stunned as well when he was messaging me about it. He was like, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but here we are. So he has definitely been imagining wisely. I'm really excited to hear more from him about the bridge of incidents that he's experienced in his growth. That's Frank. Welcome, Jamie. All right, so we like the music in the background. Okay, Smooth and easy. Just like Neville and Chill. That's the vibe for Neville and Chill. Smooth and easy. Okay. All right. What do you say we go ahead and dive in to multidimensional reality? Hello, Natisha. All right. Channel members showing up in force tonight. Love you guys. Awesome. Okay. Let's talk about the polyverse. Okay. So to talk about the polyverse, we have to talk about the universe and we have to talk about the multiverse. Okay. Universe, multiverse, polyverse. Now, I want to be clear. This is not something that I've learned from other people. Okay. So this may or may not be the way that other people look at things. Okay. But in Neville and Chill, we like to lead the cutting edge. So at least that's my vision of what Neville and Chill space is we like to lead the cutting edge. So I'm going to talk about things that I have not developed, really in conversation until tonight. And I'm also going to talk about things that, it's not like I've read this somewhere or learned it from somebody else. Like we are going straight to the source and we are exploring different frames. Now, some of the stuff that I may bring out might be informed from other sources, but specifically this idea of the polyverse, when I used a search engine to search for the term polyverse, at least on the first page of results, I didn't see anything that relates to the way that I'm going to present it tonight. So you may hear me speaking tonight and be like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with this idea, but I know it as something else. And that's entirely possible. And if so, please let me know in the chat to kind of help us, develop these ideas and also link them to other words that people are using. It's a pretty cutting edge idea. So, there's always a chance that, you kind of see like a tree of words used for cutting edge ideas until everybody kind of agrees on a specific definition for things. So let's start by talking about a perspective. Okay, this whole conversation is a perspective. Okay. All right. So the universe. Okay. So we could consider in a universe. Okay, the perspective of a universe is that there's really one primary truth. Okay, one primary truth. And that universe revolves around or is centered on this one primary truth. When I say primary truth, it's like, okay, the universe is this way. And every element of consciousness that is in this universe is really learning or growing to see the universe the way that it is. Okay, so it is a specific way, one way, right? One way, universe. And every part of that universe is learning to see it in the truth of its form. And that form is, there's one solitary truth at the center of the universe, and everybody's learning to see it and behold it in its singular truth. Okay, this is one way of looking at the idea of universe. Okay, so let's contrast that with the idea of multiverse. Okay, so multiverse would be there are multiple truths. Okay, so the universe, it's not a universe per se, it's a multiverse. So instead of one truth, universe, there's actually multiple truths, or the multiverse is multiple ways and can be viewed multiple ways that are all truthful. Okay, universe, one way, multiverse, several ways, multiple ways. Okay. So what is the polyverse? So the polyverse is actually a model that suggests that there's actually infinite truths. There's not one truth. There's not even multiple truths. There's actually infinite truths. And what I love about this idea of the polyverse is that it really relieves the stress. I was thinking about this as I was driving home earlier. I was thinking about how, like, if there's anyone in the Neville and Chill audience that just like really needs to take like a deep breath and like breathe out any stress or tension about the world or about other people or about the way that, society seems to be interacting, or like, other people seem to be interacting with each other, or like what's happening in the world. This is one of those ideas that I feel like when you really understand it, it gives you this ability to just relax. And I'm going to explain why that is. Okay. So when we consider the model of reality that we're existing in to be a universe, okay, there's one truth, which means that everyone either gets it or doesn't get it. It's very black and white. It's either black or it's white. There's no in between. You're either looking at the universe and seeing it for what it is, the truth, or you're somehow missing it, okay? Because there's only one way that it could be, okay? So there's very much a dichotomy there, and that creates a lot of stress and tension, because it's like, if you believe that there's only one truth in the world and then someone else professes a different truth, you would say, you're wrong. It's only this one way. There's only one way that the universe is. There's only one truth. Okay. And so then that creates this tension of like, they see it and they're wrong. I see it and I'm right or correct. Okay. So that just naturally, this model creates this dichotomy, and that can create this tension of like, why doesn't this other person see, the truth that there's only one thing that's true? Why can't they see that it's, this one thing? Okay. So that's why the universe can really create this sense of stress. Okay. Carrie, you're not late. I just started early. You're good. We're talking about the polyverse. Okay. Just another chill night here on Neville and Chill. Okay. So universe, very black and white. Either it's this way, like there is no other option. It can only be this way. Okay. Hey, Bill, how's it going? Okay, so multiverse releases some of that stress, because it's like, well, actually the universe is, let's say there's 5 truths in the universe. Okay. So, 5 truths now, I'm just making up a random number, right? There's multiple. Okay. Let's say 5 truths. Now chances are, as you're interacting with people, you're kind of getting to know other people's worldviews, there's more chances that they'll see at least one of these 5 truths. And so you can say, oh yeah, well, they get it. They have, they're in line with at least one of these 5 truths. And so I kind of have a little bit more tolerance and a little bit more acceptance, that other people see things other way. It's a multiverse, right? There's multiple perspectives. Like we can kind of, see see the world in different ways and still get along and still be able to have meaningful conversations. Okay. But in the multiverse, people can still be wrong. Okay. Because there's still, in the way that I'm introducing it, there's still truths and untruths. Okay. There's still, multiple, but multiple still implies a limitation. Okay. So there's still a finite amount of truths in the multiverse. Okay. Let's distinguish that with the polyverse. Okay. So in the polyverse, it's infinite truths. Infinite truths. There's a plurality of truths. Okay. Meaning that there's no longer just a specific way to look at reality, to look at our experience of life, when I say truths, and we're talking about like polyverse, like that really does touch every single aspect, like anything, and like anything about being human and having an awareness, like anything that we're aware of falls into that category. So it could extend to any topic, right? So multiverse, we say, oh, there's multiple ways to look at any topic. Polyverse, hold on. Multiverse, there's multiple ways to look at any topic, and several of them are true, but not all of them. Several of them are true, but not all of them. Okay. Polyverse introduces this idea that there are infinite ways to look at the universe. And they're all true. They're all true. Now, this is where we get to the Neville part of Neville and Chill. Because Neville Goddard teaches that each one of us create our own reality. And learning from Shweta, who's also been on Neville and Chill, she did a whole series about how scientific discovery aligns with what Neville taught as a mystic. Okay, so taking mystic ideas in general. Neville is our favorite mystic, so we focus on what he said, but really it's a mystic approach to consciousness, to awareness, to the world. So I understand from what she taught me that there's a model that explains this, a scientific model, and it's called a multi-solipsistic view of reality. So this is this idea that each one of us are creating our own individual reality, and it is distinct from every other conscious, sentient being's personal reality. So it's literally my personal reality. You have literally your personal reality. And while we can appear in each other's realities as characters, it's like dream characters, right? So right now I'm speaking to you all, and you all are characters in my personal reality. And each of you as characters have your own personal realities, of which all of us are characters acting out things, right? And you are, I'm manifesting you, you're manifesting me, okay? But it's my personal reality. So what that means is there's this idea of two people competing, okay? So like the Olympics being an example. So two people running a race. We as observers of that race believe that there's really only one person out of let's say two running a race. There's only one of them that can be the winner, okay? But in a multi-solipsistic model of reality, they can both be winners because it's their personal reality. So now I'm manifesting who's winning based on my personal reality, and they are manifesting their experience of winning or not winning based on their personal reality, okay? So this is where we get a little bit outside of the realm of like normal thinking, and it gets a little brain mind twisting. And of course we love that here at Neville and Chill. We love to kind of test the edges, okay? So let's connect this idea of a multi-solipsistic model of reality with the polyverse, okay? So the polyverse says there are infinite truths, and all of them are true, okay? Infinite truths. So really now we can just say there's infinite ways to look at anything, and all of those ways to look at something are true, okay? This aligns very beautifully with the idea of a multi-solipsistic model of reality, because that model of reality holds that what I hold in my awareness as being true is true for me, okay? It may not be true for you, but it's true for me, okay? So the polyverse has space for that, okay? The polyverse has space for that. And this is why I said, if any of you feel any type of stress or tension about any type of relationship or what people are saying or doing or thinking or believing, this is where you can take that nice deep sigh and just release all of that tension, because they're not wrong, right? You're not right. They're not wrong, but rather there are infinite ways to look at everything, and all of them are made true. They are true and are experienced as true by the person doing the looking. Okay. So the observer, each one of us is creating what is true for us. Okay. So for example, every once in a while I get on socials and I see some people that think from my perspective, some pretty far out things. Okay. Now, what I consider to be pretty far out, probably if I were to go through and give examples, some of you might say, oh, I thought that was actually very normal, but I'm kind of far out. So normal to me can be far out, and far out for me can be normal. Okay. So I see some of these people, saying things, I'm like, oh, that's pretty far out. But rather than judging them and saying they're wrong, okay, this model of reality has helped me to accept that that's them manifesting for their personal reality, and they have every right to do so. They have all of the agency of being a creator, and they have the ability to create their own personal model of reality. And it's equally true as mine. And here's the part that really can release all tension. Okay. They can create any truth they want for themselves. And that doesn't mean that it's true for me. Okay. It is a truth. It's one of the infinite ways to view whatever we're looking at. Okay. But it doesn't have to be the way of looking at it that is true for me. Okay. So this is at once super empowering, because now it releases any hallucination that someone else has control over my reality. Okay. It releases that. It becomes this, actually there, because when we believe that someone else has control over our reality, what we're saying is there's a chance that they're correct or right and I'm wrong. Okay. There's a chance that they have more truth than what I have, or that what they're thinking is true and what I'm thinking is not true. Okay. So that creates like this tension of like, oh, I could be wrong. The polyverse model completely releases that. And now it's just, oh, well, that's what they're creating for themselves. That's their view on reality. And it's true. I'm not diminishing it. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that's true for them. And also does not mean that that's true for me. Okay. That's not the truth that I'm holding as true for me. So this is really, this is a really powerful place to exist. It's powerful, but it's also, I'm going to say it's enlightened. It's an enlightened place to exist. And the reason for that is because it gives profound space to everyone. It gives the space that each of us want. Like, none of us want to feel judged by another. Okay. And with this idea of judgment comes like, oh, what you think is true is not true. And what I think is true is more true than what you think is true. I'm right, you're wrong. Okay. So like, judgment, right? So I could look at someone who's in a state and I could say, you shouldn't be that way. That's me saying my preference of how you should be is more true than how you're choosing to be. Okay. Now in a universe or in a multiverse, then there's a possibility for that. But I don't believe we're living in a universe or a multiverse. I believe we're living in a polyverse. And so in a space of a polyverse, I can see someone who's in a state, and I can completely and fully accept that they are living an equal amount of truth in their life as I am living in my life. Even though I would not choose to hold the same truths that they're choosing to hold, it doesn't mean their truths are not true. It doesn't mean that I'm right and they're wrong, or that I'm more correct and they are incorrect in any way. Like all of those words, all of those ideas, this idea of like casting things as being a certain way just evaporate in the model of polyverse. Okay, so it gives this space. And, we talk about particularly modern society as we're really discovering all of the different ways that we can be, like all of the different ways that a human can be. For a long time, in society, there wasn't space where people felt comfortable to express who they really feel they are. Okay, so we use this word, we talk about tolerance, like having tolerance for other people to express who they are and like being willing to be accepting of them. Okay, so yes, and also with the polyverse, that's written right into the code. Okay, it's not something that we now aspire to be tolerant of others. That's a part of the model, because we understand that each one of us are creating a personal reality, and there's no longer this sense. And this is like a psychic thing, because I don't feel that I feel this way. I feel like I've gotten psychic impressions that other people have felt this way. There's no longer this sense that because someone else is holding a truth that is not the same truth that I'm holding, I no longer, like, there is no threat, right? It's not threatening to my or to the truth that I'm holding, that they are choosing a different truth to hold. There is none of that because I've got this bubble that is my personal reality. Okay. So this bubble is my personal reality, and everything is true, and I'm choosing the truths to hold. Okay. So choosing the truths to hold. So Neville's definition of a state of being is everything a human being accepts and consents to as being true of themselves and others. What an amazing definition of a state of being. I'm going to say it again. A state of being is defined as everything that we believe and consent to as being true of ourselves and others. Okay, so state of being. The state that I'm in is defined according to the truths that I'm holding. Okay? So when I choose new truths to hold as primary in my awareness, my state changes. Okay? And the difference between the state that I'm in and the state that anyone else is in really comes down to those truths. Okay. Now I keep using this word truths, but it's a perspective. I'm going to kind of define what I mean by truth. So it's a perspective. It's a way of looking at things. It's an assessment. It could be formed from logic. It could be formed from intuition. It could be formed from, what you've been taught. It could be formed from personal revelation, things that you've downloaded in your own consciousness or become aware of. Like, there's many origin points of truths, of perspectives. And what I'm saying is that all of them can be true for ourselves when we choose to hold them. Okay. And the truths that we choose to hold define the state that we're in. Okay. And so when we look at someone else and we say, oh, they're in a very different state than I am, what are we saying? We're saying they are choosing to hold and make real in their personal reality a certain set of truths, a certain set of interesting beliefs, yes, but also behaviors, because the behaviors follow the beliefs, ideas and ideals, thoughts, attitudes. Like, it really is comprehensive, what our truths are, what the attributes of the state, that we're in, and this idea of the truths really making the state. So this idea of polyverse sets ourselves free, and it also sets all others free as well. Now, what's really interesting, more things that are interesting about this, because I just find this whole idea fascinating. More things that are interesting about this is this idea of consensus reality. Okay, so I have what's true for me and the truths that I'm holding as real in my life, and then I manifest an experience of those truths, because that's the nature of personal realities. We manifest our state is made visible. Okay, so we manifest into matter the solidified energy correlate of our state. Okay, so our state would be intangible at first, and then our state becomes tangible, and it becomes, the place that we're living. It becomes our surroundings. Like if you've ever, seen someone's workspace, right? Their workspace is, can really be evidence of their state, because it's like they are pushing out into the space around them what is, the arrangements of their mind, right? As an example. Okay, so this idea of consensus reality is like, okay, so I have things that are personally true for me, and my state is true for me. My state is made visible. And then now the parts that become a consensus reality. So it's like we're still interacting with each other. As I was saying in the beginning, I'm showing up as a character in your drama. You're showing up as a character in my drama. So like there is some overlap, but I feel like there's this freeing that comes from the polyverse way of viewing this overlap. But it's still really interesting, because now we have to talk about things like how to build organizations of people working together for a common objective, but every single one of them is in their own unique and distinct configuration of truth. Okay, so they're, it's a polyverse. So it's like, now in an organization, it's not like, okay, so you think about organization, cultural, like the culture of a workplace, the culture of, whether it's a for-profit, a nonprofit, like any organization where people are working together, there's a culture associated with that. And that culture tends to place certain things as true and other things as not true. Okay, so, if you think about a company and its mission statement and its values, it's like, okay, this is what us as a company are holding as the truths for the company, which is, it's company is an idea, but it also, kind of takes on, you can kind of anthropomorphize the company, and it kind of becomes, an entity. Okay, we call them entities, right? They're non-human entities, companies. They exist in the world of imagination, but we treat them as though they're real. Okay, so now in a setting like that, how do we build according to the model of reality that suggests that there's infinite truths? How do we get people on the same page enough to manifest together, to work together, to share objectives, share missions, okay, in a setting like the polyverse? So this is where we're getting very much into some of these leading edge conversations, because there's people, I'm certain, that are studying this, the organizational behavior people, the leadership management consulting people, the people that study organizations and leadership and management and structures. And, this idea of like kind of blooming into the polyverse, like this represents an upgrade in human consciousness. So more and more people will begin to embrace this as their truth. Okay, so like the truth of infinite truths will start to become more true for more people. So this is something that's like rapidly advancing and evolving. And so as that does, our structures of how we interact and work and relate to each other will upgrade as well. I find that fascinating. I think there's going to be, I perceive that there's really going to be a new, I say new, I would say it's not that new. It's actually ancient, because there's really nothing new under the sun. That's the circle and spiral of time. So it's like we're coming back to something that we're coming back to a worldview that we used to have. We, meaning, that's an interesting question. Who do I mean by we? I would say, this is what I'm going to say. In history, on planet Earth, sentient beings living on planet Earth had a polyversal view of the polyverse. Like they embraced polyversal truth. And then, this circle and spiral of time, then we went through a period of, the universe, developing all of our science as a universe. I mean, remember when we went through the period where, Galileo was like, hey, everybody, I just discovered the Earth is not the center of the universe. And the scientists are like, that's ridiculous. They wouldn't even look. They wouldn't even look through the telescope to try to see, right? They weren't even curious. They're like, no, it's a universe. Earth is the center. There's no other way to see it, right? One truth. There's one truth. Well, it turns out that truth it became upgraded or expanded into another truth, which is actually, the Earth is not the center of the universe. Okay, so let's use that as an example, actually, because there is a perspective on reality where you could say that the Earth is the center of the universe. You could make that true for yourself, just like, one that I see from time to time is people who believe in the flat Earth. Okay, so no one can, in a polyversal model of reality, say that is incorrect. Okay, because it's your personal reality. If you are holding as true for yourself that the Earth is a plane and it is flat, no one can say that that's incorrect or untrue in a polyversal model of reality. It could not be the truth that you're currently holding for yourself, or maybe, it may not be, maybe, right? Could be either way. But that person, they're no longer wrong for saying that, okay? So this is where we give this profound freedom to everyone to view the polyverse the way that they are choosing to view the polyverse, and they're not wrong for it, okay? And this comes back, again, I really want to emphasize this idea of that sigh of relief. We are not responsible for anyone else's truths. They don't affect us. I know it can feel like they do, but and I think that's where some of this, the overlap, right? How do we relate? How does my personal universe, my personal polyverse relate to your personal reality polyverse, right? So I think there's some overlap there. This is what I would say. I would say that anyone else can choose to hold whatever truths they choose to hold. And that does not affect the truths that you choose to hold. Okay? You may experience manifested, in your reality, interacting with someone else's truths, but it doesn't have to change what you are holding as true. I think that's where the distinction is. It's this is my body of truths that are equally valid as this other person's body of truths, and they can continue to hold as true whatever they please, and it doesn't change what I hold as true unless I make a decision, conscious or subconscious, because if we're not aware of this, we could allow someone else's truths to sow a seed of doubt, and then our truths could change, right? Now, I do want to be clear here. So just because we're holding something as true and all truths are equally valid does not mean that it's necessarily the truth that is the best one for us to hold. Okay? So, I could believe, I could hold as true that an international elite group of people control my life. Okay? I could give my power away to them, and I could say, no matter what I do, I'll never be successful because these elite, people are running the world and I am at their mercy. Okay, I could hold that as true. Now, that obviously, if I allow that truth to affect what I do with my life, then it becomes true for me. And I end up living life subject to an international group of elite people that are trying to run the world, because now that's become true for me. So now I'm literally subjecting myself to that external rule. So now that is my truth. And that's equally valid as all other truths, but it may not be the one that truly serves me in the highest and best. Okay. So then I have the opportunity to upgrade that truth and actually say, no, I'm going to choose to hold as true that I am responsible fully for my life, for the possibilities of my life, for the opportunities, for how I wake up and engage with my awareness, with my reality. I am fully responsible. I have complete, full agency over my life. Like that can be the truth that I choose to hold. And then that is, if that's the truth I'm holding, that is now true for me. Okay. So now I'm sitting next to someone who believes that other thing, and that other thing is true for them. They're subject to some, and I'm not, because it's not in my body of beliefs. It's not in my body of truths, but they're not wrong for thinking that way. And I can't tell them, not truthfully, I can't tell them that that isn't true, because they are making it true by holding it as their truth. And they are equal to me as a fragment of source. Okay. They are a spark of the one divine source, and their consciousness is collapsing out of the field of infinite possibilities, a reality in which they are controlled. And my consciousness is collapsing out of a field of infinite possibilities, a reality in which I am fully responsible for my own life and am not subject to external control. Okay, so their reality is true for them, my reality is true for me, and I don't have to sweat a drop over what they're holding as true. Okay, I can completely let it go, because all things exist. It's a polyverse. I can literally exist from a place of curiosity and just be like, really? You really believe that? Interesting. Well, like, how does that work for you? Right? Without like taking on, be like, oh, I wonder if that's true. Like, no. I know it's not true for me, but I'm not going to say it's not true for you. So because this is true for you, now it's like two polyversal, two manifestations of two distinct individual polyverses now interacting with each other. Oh, tell me what life is like living under the rule of these, people, because I don't know, because I'm not doing it. Right. So now it's like literally a place of curiosity as opposed to a place of judgment. And it's no longer making anybody wrong for anything. Everything is potentially true when someone chooses to make it true. Now, this, and I see a bunch of comments here. I'll get to your comments in just a moment. So I feel this, so many things here. So one of the things that I want to say is, I feel like we're at this time where the revelation that the polyverse is truly a polyverse, and there are things, there are beings, there are models of reality that are about to be engaged with at a level that hasn't been seen in a really, really long time here on Earth. Okay, so I'm talking about, I say that it's like so abstract when I say it that way, but let me try to make it more distinct, right? So it is my truth, okay? Because again, polyverse, right? So I'm holding as true that the academic produced story of human origins on planet Earth is incomplete and lacking a lot of very important information. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is what I was taught in school about where humans came from, and like, the story of like, all this stuff that I got in like world history class as an example. Okay, incomplete for sure, and lacking some very, very, very important information. And so the truth that I'm holding as true is that there's really going to be a rewriting that is more accurate, with a different, more expanded, and I would say, I want to say more true. I feel like we're using the truth word a lot in this conversation, so I want to be careful not to overuse it, right? But like a more accurate, there we go, more accurate. It's not about true or not true, more accurate. As like, so accuracy would be based on evidence. That's the distinction. Okay, so truth is just kind of ethereal. Like you just, what's true for you is what's true for you. You don't have to have evidence, right? It's faith. Faith comes into play there, right? Like You can hold a truth that you don't have tangible evidence for, and is still equally as true as if you did have evidence for it. If you have faith, okay, faith is the evidence of things unseen, things hoped for, right? So when I say accuracy, that's referring to evidence, okay? So my perspective is that there'll be evidence that really there's a different timeline of like Earth and Earth's history, and then also sentient beings on Earth, humans and other types of sentient beings, and all of this will lead to potentially a very radical shift in consciousness for sure, but also in our frame for how we interact with what we think the world is. Okay, so if we think about Galileo, hey guys, the Earth is not the center. I actually found we're spinning around something. Okay, like what a monumental shift that was once more people accepted that as accurate based on evidence. Okay, so it's a similar thing. So like a pretty substantial shift. So like our kids, or if our kids are grown, their kids will be taught something very different than what I was taught. Okay, maybe I don't know what you were taught, but like I'm assuming it's probably not that. Maybe you've learned that now, but probably what you were taught in an academic setting was probably not what is going to be taught in this generation or next generation. Okay, so really an expansion and a development of a view on like what the world is that's really going to shift. Okay, so this is going to put a lot of evolutionary pressure on a lot of people who are still stuck in the universe. It's either this way or it's this way, and they spent their whole life thinking that it was only this way, and now it's like, how are you going to reconcile that? And that'll create a lot of stress potentially. Okay, or the multiverse, where it's like, oh well, it's a little bit of this, 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 and still this other thing comes out of left field, and you're like, I don't know how to reconcile this. Okay, or there's the polyverse, where I can sit here in my personal reality and say, in my personal reality, I've manifested the evidence of an accurate Earth history that includes all these things, that are in my awareness, and for me, I can hold it as true, and it is now true for my personal, from the place of my personal reality. Okay, and then other people could or could not accept it as true, and it doesn't affect me. Like it. I'm not trying to sell anybody on the idea. I'm not trying to, tell someone that they're wrong. It's literally just becomes a curiosity. Like, oh, based on what I've learned, Earth has a very different history than what I was taught in school. And they're like, someone else would be like, what are you talking about? Like that, it's just this way. And then instead of saying, no, actually it's this other way, I can say, oh, I'm curious. Like, how does that affect, your life? Or, like what, like, Tell me more about this reality that you've constructed for yourself, if I'm curious, right? But what I'm saying is it completely relieves us of any stress or pressure or tension about like worrying about how other people or feeling the need to control how other people think or feel or interact or behave. It's like it sets everybody free. And because we understand the nature of reality, right? When I'm setting everyone else free, I'm also setting myself free. Right? So it's literally a liberation. And I feel like it's a timely liberation, because when this, other, and I feel more accurate, like view of the polyverse, really comes out, I think embracing the polyverse is really going to be the best way to handle what would otherwise potentially be a lot of cognitive dissonance. Okay. So I talked in Neville and Chill a couple weeks ago, the one titled "It Broke the Fourth Wall." Okay. I talked about this idea of, this being unzipping reality, like literally unzipping in someone's kitchen and like pulling apart the fabric and poking the head through. And this person sitting on their couch, like looking at the kitchen, it was in their model of reality that there's other beings and that, reality, there's multiple dimensions and densities and, interdimensional travel and all. So like they were able to accept that, but their physical body still freaked out. And they had like a panic attack physically, even though mentally they were like, oh yeah, I can accept that beings can do things like this. Okay. But their physical body still panicked and freaked out to the point where the being was like, oh, sorry. And like closed it and sipped it, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to, terrify you in this way. So what I'm saying is that I feel like that's an example potentially of cognitive dissonance, or in this case, maybe it's there's more of a physicality to it, physiological dissonance. Okay. But I feel like this idea of the polyverse can really set us free and enable us to operate in a world where, again, there's infinite truths and we can remain grounded and rooted in our body of truths, not in a static, rigid type of way, but in a, I know what I believe, like in terms of my values, like regardless of all the possible truths, I remain rooted and grounded in, what is beautiful, what is lovely, what is, what is represents an expansion of possibilities. I believe that, the whole world is myself pushed out. So there's nothing out there that isn't me. So from a place of that, I love everything, right? So it's like, that's the type of truth that isn't going to change no matter what the evidence or what, accurate this or accurate that, like, or in intermediary truths that might shift. I'm still open to learning and growing and evolving, but my fundamental truths are the truths that don't change. Like they'll always be held like that for me. Now that I've reached that, because it's worth pointing out that at earlier parts of my journey, I did not see the world that way. Okay. So I've evolved as a human being to the point where I see that everything is an aspect of me. So there is really no other per se. Okay. So it's like everything is me. So the idea of everything being me is like, I'm not going to hurt myself, right? Meaning I'm not going to actively try to hurt things in my world. And I also know that my world is not going to actively try to hurt me, right? Because it's like I'm at peace in my personal reality. Does that make sense? Right? I'm at peace in my personal reality. So I feel comfortable. I feel safe. I feel safe in my body. I feel safe in my life. I feel safe in my neighborhood. I feel safe in my world. When I travel, I don't have, like this fear, or if I go to a place that, is like, the vibes are weird or whatever, I'm still going to use my ability to sense vibes to make smart decisions, but it's not from a place of fear, right? It's not from this, oh, the world's going to try to hurt me. I'm completely liberated from this idea. Okay. So that's an example of a fundamental truth that will not change, even if, the story of Earth history changes, or even if, a being unzips, reality right here in my studio and says, hey, can I come on your live stream? Right? Like, I'm still going to be like, hey, other part of me that I've never seen with my physical eyes before, what's up? Right? Okay. So I think this is really a powerful and expansive idea. And I'm gonna get to your chat here in a moment, but just glancing, I can already see that a lot of you have already adopted this, and I love that. That's amazing. And I also love that we can talk about it. Like, this is so powerful. And I also love that we have words for it, which may or may not be, again, words other people are using for it. But to me, it works, right? I think the words work. So unless some of you have other words that you feel could be more accurate, right? Then we can talk about that. But I think, this idea of the polyverse, infinite truths, whatever we're holding is true for us. Like, I think this is, there's really something here, and we're only scratching the surface in terms of where this conversation can go. But I'm going to take a pause here and look at your comments. So I see we have Frank in the chat. What's up, Frank? I think before you got here, I was talking about how you have gone through a massive shift in your life. You could call it an upgrade, massive upgrade. You've manifested something that really seemed quite I mean, you have indicated to me you were quite surprised by it, but I also wasn't, because I know how powerful of an imaginer you are. You have a very powerful, and all of us know, because you've shared it on Neville and Chill, your perspective about creating your reality. So I'm not really surprised, but I think it was like a pretty intense bridge of incidents to like this massive shift in your life. So I was saying that I'm going to have you on. I think it'll be in 2 weeks if you're up for it. I'd love to have you on to share some of that. I'm always surprised, he says. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to scroll back. Let me take a look at your chat. Looks pretty lively tonight. I appreciate you all. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. Okay, so gift wrap. So poly is the same as multi. No. And maybe you got the distinction, but I want to go back over it just to make sure we're clear. So universe is, there's one truth and it's black and white. It can only be one way. Okay, so you could say the universe sees itself this one way and everybody else either gets that or doesn't. And if they don't, they're wrong, because the universe is only this one way, because it's universe, one truth. Okay, multiverse is, there's multiple truths. So there's a couple different things, a couple different ways to look at the multiverse that could be true, but it still implies that there's other ways to look at it that are not true. Okay, so there's more gray, right? A couple more shades of gray, but it's still, there's some limitation. There's really only a couple perspectives on the universe that are true. Polyverse is, there are infinite perspectives and they are all true for the person who is observing, the being that is observing. There are infinite perspectives, and whichever perspective that being adopts, that is true and becomes true for them, because it now becomes part of the personal reality. And again, solipsistic model of reality. You can Google that and learn more. There's people, scientists talking about this. So it's a model of how to reconcile this idea, again, of, two people manifesting the same outcome, right? But like, we as outsiders would only see one, like in the example of the race, we would only see one of them win, but they could both experience in their own personal realities winning. It gets kind of like, it kind of twists the mind a little bit, right? But that's what the multi-solipsistic model of reality was designed to reconcile. Like, it's meaning it's a framework for how to reconcile things like that, situations like that, or ideas like that get a little, multi-solipsistic is a framework for how to understand that. Cool. We've got, we had now here, Mike. He was here and then he left. Natisha says, that's exactly how I see the world. I didn't know it had a name. Okay. So this is the name that we're giving it in the Neville and Chill space. I don't know if, I don't know what other names. I did see someone talk about something pluralism. I seem to remember, I'm like getting this little flash in my mind, something about pluralism. There's probably other words for it, but in this space, we can talk about it as the polyverse. I think that fits. Elena says, same here. I remember believing in polyverse when I was a little kid. Fantastic. That's so cool. Yeah. I still know it, but not as strongly as I did as a kid. I'm getting my poly mojo back. Ooh, I love it. Get that poly mojo back. Yeah, exactly. Poly mojo. Natisha says, awesome. I embraced the polyverse way of thinking about 2 years ago. Interesting. So that thing that happened in 2020, like globally, that global thing, I think that really, in many, I'm going to say in many ways, helped to birth into wider consciousness this idea of the polyverse. Because I think this idea of like groupthink, and then, we kind of saw like programming and like people all like, choosing, there's just like, it was such a mess on so many levels that I think it birthed new outside the box of the universe and multiverse. It birthed new outside of that box ways of thinking. And I think that the polyverse, not that it didn't exist before then, but I feel like it kind of gained more presence in the common currency of thought. I still think we're at the very leading edge in this conversation. But I still think, we are at the leading edge, and also it is gaining more current, like common currency of thought. Yeah. Elena says, must be so life affirming and freeing to be in that mode. Yes, I think that's the idea. Life affirming and freeing. Glad you're getting your poly mojo back. Gift Wrap says, I see. Yes. Okay. So that was that question earlier. Cool. As a kid, I believed everyone should write their own encyclopedia or Bible based on their own individual truths. Now that, wow. You're like, you were born as a revolutionary, weren't you? I'm really getting that, really getting those revolutionary vibes. Like there may be a time coming when something like that would exist. But the utility, so yes, you could have your own personal encyclopedia or Bible, but I think the utility traditionally of encyclopedias or the Bible as like a metaphysical text is in that overlap that we talked about, the consensus reality. I think that's really where the utility is found. So I think that while we could have our own, what's fascinating to me is like that cutting edge of like, how do we exist in a polyverse and navigate consensus reality? And I think a lot of it just comes from mindset and like this level of profound acceptance of all possible truths. But then also I feel like there's like this negotiation process of like agreeing on what will be our consensus reality. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. So Frank says, I run my world. Exactly. So that's your truth, right? So that's in your polyverse. That is a part of the truths that you have held as true as an observer. So now you are making that true for you, right? Natisha says, that's a good idea. This, personal encyclopedia Bible. We could gain a better understanding of where others are coming from. I love that innocent perspective. Yes. Natisha says, that's the problem we run into when we try to tell others they are wrong. Okay. So, it's interesting. Every time I think about this, there's like this energy of like stress, like cortisol, like it's like the stress energy of like, they're wrong and I can't exist. Like I cannot coexist with this person when they're so wrong, like in their thinking or and this, again, just, we keep saying it, but like this polyverse model of reality completely dispels that as an illusion. Right? They're not wrong. They're just choosing a different set of truths. So it's like, I am now free of any responsibility for making someone else see something other than what they're choosing to see. I have no responsibility for that, because to think that I do is to render their truth as invalid. And if I render someone else's truth that is true for them and part of the polyverse of infinite truths as invalid, by very nature, I am rendering my own truths as invalid, right? It's not because it's a polyverse, it's infinite truths and they're all true. As soon as I say that your truth is not true, I'm now saying my own truths are not true, right? Because I'm now going against this model of the polyverse, because again, infinite truths, they're all true. They're not all true for, so all things exist, right? Creation is finished. All things exist. This is a core mystic and Neville concept. Creation is finished. All things exist. And I'm seeing certain things right now. I'm not seeing everything right now. I'm seeing certain things right now. Okay. So in that same vein, polyverse, there's infinite truths and they all exist. And I'm seeing some of them right now, meaning the ones that I'm holding as true for me are out picturing into my reality. Right? So it really creates this person is holding a different set of those, but they're equally valid. I'm holding my set and they're equally valid. And I can just chill. I can just relax. I can just be open and accepting. And, I feel like tolerant is such an edgy. There's like a tension to the word tolerant. It's not even tolerant. I can be open and accepting and just genuine and curious about other people or not. It's up to me, right? I should say I can be open and genuine and accepting of other people. And then the part that's or not is the curious. I don't have to be curious. I think in the polyverse, I do have to be open and accepting, or I choose to be, right? It's never a have to. I don't have to be anything. Polyverse, right? I can choose to be open and accepting and just, chill. And then I can also choose whether or not to be curious. So some people set of beliefs, I don't feel the need to investigate further. I don't feel the need to understand them and why they think that way more. I can just be like, hey, cool. It's a polyverse. We're living in the liquid modernity, like you do you, right? And completely set them free in that way. It's a powerful statement, gift wrapped. It's a powerful statement because I wish I'd known this 25 years ago. That indicates the value of it that you see now. And also, polyverse, you were just holding different truths back then. So it's not like it was less true. It's just you were holding different truths. And so I think really you can embrace the possibility of holding it now, regardless of the timing of it. And you're always going to find out at the perfect time. Ooh, Kevin, great question. I thought there was only one I am. Yes, there is. The compound unity. That's what Neville talks about, the compound unity. So yes, there is only one I am. And in this state of being individual, self-aware, sentient beings, that in that one, the one thing that we all are consists of infinite truths, and they're all true. Okay, so that one I am is your consciousness, my consciousness, choosing a set of truths. Okay, and then obviously, if we zoom out a level, the polyverse is all one thing. Okay, so it's like, I'm seeing like visuals. I don't know how to describe visuals for you verbally, but it's literally it's one thing, but there's not just one way of looking at this one thing, and there's not just two ways, and there's not just four ways. There's actually infinite ways of looking at this one thing. And because this one thing is a mirror, right? It shows us the truth that we are holding of it. So that's how we can all be one thing when we zoom out a level. And at this level of awareness, also experience a polyverse of infinite truths, infinite perspectives, and they're all true, right? So this is, I love this because this, we speak about, we're infinite, we have unlimited possibilities. And I feel like the polyverse is a model for helping us understand the ways in which that statement is true. Fantastic question, Kevin. I love that. Truth is subjective, or subjective truth, Natisha is saying. Yeah. It's really important. Then I would have all my beliefs lined up. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you are stating this is a powerful statement, Kevin. It is really important because then I would have all my beliefs lined up. Okay. So what I'm interpreting this comment to mean is that if you're living in a personal reality and you're going to manifest what you believe is true of your reality, then you better have your beliefs aligned with what you want to be true for you. And yes, absolutely. Like it's imperative because just as we're setting other people free and setting ourselves free, with this freedom comes a profound responsibility, meaning that Yes, I'm setting everyone else and myself free. And also, as a consequence of that, I am now supremely responsible for the truths that I hold as my truths. Because that's now the world that I will live in, right? So, when we were in a universe or a multiverse, it was like, oh, well, we're all trying to see things the same one or same couple of ways, right? And then you're either right or wrong. The polyverse, it's like, no, it's actually like, no matter how you see the world, you're going to make that true for yourself. Okay. So it's like, now there's the responsibility just went up. Yes, the liberty went up, the freedom went up, but also the responsibility went up. Those two things went up together. Okay. So I think that's a powerful statement. Frangelico says, it is true that I am a man, technically. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I'm not real sure what you mean by that, but yes, it is a truth that you are the technically, maybe that was the emphasis, technically. Okay. So you have evidence for that. It's accurate, right? You have evidence that you are a man. So there's accuracy to that truth. And it's not just a truth that you're holding. Yeah. Because so quite honestly, frankly, and also, modernly, meaning we're present to it recently. Okay. There's also people who have other sets of truths around that. What you're saying, it's true that I'm a man, technically. People have other sets of truths, and in the polyverse, like, they are completely free to hold those truths as true, and they're not wrong or incorrect. Right? That's the nature of the polyverse, right? So it's this whole other perspective. Pretty incredible. If everything is one, then there is only God, the one and only consciousness streaming. Exactly, Kevin. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. That's a Neville and a Bible thing, right? Neville talks about it in the Bible. So that's the principle. So we're talking about that, and then the reality created out of that. And then this is a model for conceptualizing that reality, this polyversal model of that reality. And it is a consciousness streaming, which also explains how this can be true, right? If we were living in a material universe, it would be much easier to say this is correct and this is incorrect, or this is true and this is not true. But it's not a material universe. Not first. It's not primarily. It is not a primary, what am I trying to say? The matter is not primary, consciousness is primary. Okay, so that's my truth. Okay, so that's in the polyverse, that's my polyversal truth, is that this is a consciousness first reality, meaning that consciousness is primary and everything that we observe exists within consciousness, okay, which is very much in line with what you're saying. And also this idea that everything is a dream, right? There's only consciousness dreaming. So any matter is simply, consciousness. It's a phenomena arising out of consciousness, right? So a field of consciousness, creates an attractor field, you could call it. And then, the vibrations of energy form are subatomic particles, which then coalesce. And then, eventually you get, molecules, and then you get, so atoms, molecules, and then those, form into substances, periodic table. And then, out of those things, you can get metals and alloys and this and that and everything else. And then out of that becomes everything that we know. But it all starts just as simply a conscious awareness that is now interacting with, the materium. It's like generating out of consciousness what we perceive to be materials, right? Wasn't Galileo arrested, or was that Da Vinci? I don't know. Someone could fact check that if we're curious. I don't know which it was. I know that, that's a pretty common thing. They say that, people come up with these cutting edge ideas. First, they're usually ridiculed, right? Because the cognitive dissonance, people, it's interesting to me and kind of funny, actually. I find it funny in an ironic sense that the only thing that is constant about the polyverse is change. And yet that's also the one thing that most human beings seem to be adverse to. It's like a lot of human beings seem to resist change, even though that's really the only thing that is the true constant that we can observe and say, is like the nature of the polyverse is change, but so many people have resistance to that. So, I say that about other people, but really that's an invitation for me to look at my own life and say, okay, let's make sure that I'm flowing, right? I have the consciousness of water. I am not resistant to change. Let me make sure that I am embracing of change in accordance with those truths that I hold so dear, right? And primary. I hope he says, yes, there is only one I am. If solipsism exists, it must be true. Yes. Yes, this is very freeing. Yeah. Yeah, Carrie, that's my perspective on this too. Like, and that's why I came on here with this sense of like, I hope that out of this conversation, everyone in this space will just take a nice deep breath and just relax and just let it all go. Like this is the opportunity to rise above the noise. It's a frame that frees. It frees us. And that's talking about resilience to change. We have like the best way to be resilient to change is to be free, to free our minds. And I feel this model of the polyverse helps us free our minds. And that's only going to help us be more resilient. Kevin says it's truly liberating. Yeah. Yeah. Frank says, these truths I hold and plant in my garden, they are all kept secret until they become apparent to my 3D world. And now, even then, I wish to keep them secret. Okay. Does that mean you're not coming on Neville and Chill to talk about your amazing manifestations? It's up to you, man. But like, I low-key kind of talked it up. So like, I'm just saying, like, I think there's a lot of people that would love to hear what you have to say, but it's up to you. If that's not what you mean, obviously that's cool too. But I was like, oh, wait, do you want to keep them secret? Because if you do, like, that's cool, man. It's your truth. Oh, good. I think Josiah is a reincarnation of Neville. Okay, so that's really interesting. I'm not. So that could be. So again, polyverse, you could make that true, right? For you, I could be. For me, I'm not really going to comment on that, but I will tell a fun story. Okay. Right after I sip my raspberry rose poppy drink here. Okay, this is what happened. One of my, I'm going to call her a spirit guide in a human body. Okay, so in my polyverse, I have mentors and teachers and guides that I learn from, and they have been a very treasured, sacred, and beautiful part of my path. Like, as much as I've downloaded directly from source, I've also manifested knowledge and insights and evolution as characters coming into my life and teaching me things. And one of these individuals, who I've had the honor and pleasure and joy, I think it's all three of those things. She's just I'm just a beautiful, amazing person, and I honor and admire her in many ways. This woman, I've she's been a mentor of mine for many years, and she is also very psychically activated and very aware. And she, does things like, visiting the Akashic records. She's like, she can travel in that way, and she, it's like well-versed in exploring other realms of reality, et cetera, and so forth. Okay, here's the story. Okay, so I was sitting with her at one point, having a conversation with her, and I asked her, I said, hey, there's this man who lived in the mid 20th century. He's a metaphysician and a teacher, talking about Neville, obviously. She wasn't familiar with him by name, but I was describing him. And I said, and I want to know if he's like part of my soul group, okay? Or perhaps a reincarnation, like, whatever, like something like that. Like, what is my relate? Because I really feel so profoundly connected to this man and his teachings. It's not just the teachings. I actually really feel connected to the man. Just as a side note, for example, when we do Sunday Mystery School, which right now we're really focused on the teachings of Neville Goddard, his masterclass. I'm reteaching this man's masterclass, which is humbling and a profound honor to do it, to feel competent enough in my journey to be able to do it. Like for me, it's like I feel humbled and honored to be able to take what was really a pinnacle moment of this man's life and reteach it. Using that as a source material for YouTube, like for global. I could geek out about this for hours, but like I'm very humbled and honored to be able to do this. So like I feel profoundly connected to Neville. His work, his teachings, I've learned so much from him, but also as a man, like I feel connected to like his humanity, and he was such a godly man. And he's so inspiring, not just in what he taught, but also how he lived. Okay. So I feel really connected to him. And, there's other people whose teachings I feel connected with, but I don't feel connected to their humanity in the same way that I feel connected to Neville. Like I could consider Neville like my metaphysical grandfather. Like in a spiritual sense, he's like in my paternal lineage, it feels like. Okay. So I asked this woman, my mentor, I was like, hey, and she goes, well, I can access the Akashic and take a look if you'd like me to do so. And I said, yes, please. And so she was silent for a few moments. And then she comes back and she said, Josiah, that record is currently locked. And I said, what? That record is locked. What? And she goes, well, it's rare. I've only ever experienced this a couple of times where I tried to access a record and it was locked. But she said in the past, or at least in her understanding, right, her education about these things, she said, usually when a record is locked on a soul, not an event per se, but a soul, right? A sentient being, a soul. When a soul record is locked in the Akashic, she said, usually it means that being is undergoing the process of reincarnation, like imminently. Okay. So it's like the record is, I don't understand how all of the physics of the Akashic, but this is what she told me. Okay. So she was like, I can't look at that right now, Josiah, because it's locked. And usually, maybe not always, but usually when it's locked, it means that soul is in the process of sending an incarnation. I don't know why it locks at the time of incarnation. Again, I don't understand all of the physics to this, but that's what she told me. And I was like, okay. Satisfied with that answer, as much as I was like, well, dang, I'd love to know more, but like, that's what that was. So that's what she told me. So this was 2 years ago that I asked her. So I'm actually about due to sit with her again as a mentor. So maybe if I feel so inspired in the moment, maybe I'll ask her again to check the Akashic records again. Now I could do it too. I could go through the process of accessing the Akashic records, but she, like, this is part of her, she's, she's like an Akashic records, PhD, right? Whereas I'm a layperson. Okay. Like I've been there, but I'm not, I'm not super versed at the moment. Right. So I'd like to maybe have her do that. So that's my story. Pretty interesting, right? Yeah. Interesting. 2 years ago, locked, incarnating. At least that's the information she was getting. It's locked. He's incarnating. So yeah, I don't know what that means. Maybe one of you guys, maybe one of you on my channel had a baby around 2 years ago, and maybe surprise, right? Who knows? So there's that. You can have some fun with that one. Carrie is giving us a new word for our lexicon here at Neville and Chill, and that word is grooted, which is a combination of grounded and rooted. Grooted. That's pretty good. I like that. So we are grooted in the polyverse. Awesome. We are guardians of the polyverse. Yes, exactly. Gift Wrap says, I heard my son call out, Mom. I heard it clearly. When I walked to his room, he had his headphones on, streaming his live video, and he said nothing to me. From another parallel reality? Quite possibly, or he was thinking of you, like you flashed across his mind. And so he reached out. Could have been a soul, a parallel reality, maybe. There's all kinds of phenomena like this. Yeah, something to play with there. Like, there could be a multitude of explanations for this sort of thing. But yeah, that's definitely a psychic hit. You could call it that, a psychic hit for sure. Yes, Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie. It appears you're a channel member, and I don't think I've seen you on Neville and Chill before. So welcome, and thank you for being a member. And yes, everyone is me pushed out. So yes, exactly. Yeah, you're right on it. We live in Infinityville. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Kevin Thompson. Oh, Natisha, speaking to Kevin. Your reality seems interesting and I like it. I hope you gain clarity and peace on what's true for you. Spoken like a true citizen of the polyverse. I love that. Kevin says, I know who I am. Thank you, guys. Kevin, thanks for being with us. I love your presence here. Like, your energy is just, yeah, you've really brought something tonight. We love it. We need a Neville and Chill glossary. Okay, so I was actually talking to Carrie, my partner Carrie, earlier tonight. So YouTube has been my primary hub for all of my work in regards to metaphysics and Neville and consciousness. And you've got Sunday Mystery School, Neville and Chill, my narrations. It's been YouTube. It's been like my central focus. And about two-ish years ago, I signed up for a premium plan on Buzzsprout, which is a podcasting platform. And I started publishing episodes of Daily Neville to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcast, like all, Deezer. There's like a billion podcast platforms, right? So Buzzsprout is a way to shoot out podcasts everywhere. And I started with Daily Neville episodes, and then I started publishing Sunday Mystery School episodes. But I had the idea earlier, and I think it's inspired, and you made me think of it when you said Neville and Chill glossary. I think Neville and Chill is literally a podcast, whereas Sunday Mystery School, it could be consumed as a podcast, but like, I don't think that's really, it's not quite the vibe of a podcast. This space, I feel like, really is the vibe of a podcast, especially when I'm doing like the long form deep dive interviews. Like, it really has that feel. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the podcast that I've been doing so far, and I'm going to start over, and it's going to be a Neville and Chill podcast. And what this will do, and the reason why I'm speaking about it with you all, this will allow it to be consumed on all podcast platforms. And what I really like about it is that it should change the paradigm in regards to advertising. So if you are not a premium subscriber on YouTube, you get ads. It's like YouTube's job is to sell ads. And so, they want creators to create interesting content that people will watch so that they get eyeballs on the screen. And then they sell ads so that advertisers can, pay for those eyeballs. And that's how the relationship of YouTube servers and all of the work that goes into creating content, that's how that's monetized. Okay. So YouTube's job is to sell ads. If you don't have premium, your presence on YouTube is subsidized by advertisers. And while that's just kind of the way things are right now, It's not necessarily ideal because not everybody wants premium. Some people, aren't on YouTube enough to make the investment. Other people, just don't like the idea of paying. I don't know what other people think, but personally, I've had premium for since it was released. I think it's almost 10 years now. So I haven't seen an ad on YouTube in forever, but I understand for people that do see them, they can be quite annoying. On a long form conversation like Neville and Chill, I think that ads can be kind of distracting and interruptive. So what this will enable us to do is to get off of YouTube and get into like a Spotify, get into, all these other places where podcasts are. And instead of ads spread throughout the video, it'll be like how podcasts do it, where the podcast can be sponsored. And I've already started thinking about who the sponsors might be. Like I would love to do an ad for Shakti Mat as an example, or for Poppy that I drink on Neville and Chill every time we're here, Poppy or HIYO, right? So do some like fun, relevant advertising as opposed to whatever YouTube's servers decide that you're going to see, right? So kind of a paradigm switch there and making it more of a serious podcast going forward. So that's something that I'm cooking on now. And I think that with that can come things like a podcast website and things like a glossary, right? We can really start to develop the lore and the culture and the community around Neville and Chill. When I started Neville and Chill a couple months ago, I honestly thought it was going to be a one-time thing. I literally was like halfway through a Tuesday and I was like, I feel like I got to talk to my people. Like I just felt inspired. I was like, I need to talk to my people. Like we need to have a conversation. So I just hopped on and I was like, hey, let's have just a chill conversation. And then one thing led to another. And now, we've logged 20 episodes and have had phenomenal guests. Like I've so very much enjoyed all of the guests we brought on. Frank, Shweta, Angela, Tamer. We have more coming. And I've actually had some ideas about other people to invite that haven't been in this space yet, but will be coming. So I think we're going to lean into this idea of making it a podcast and like really build it in that way. And hopefully it'll make it more tasty from the community's perspective in terms of like consuming it, right? More tasty, more delicious, and overall just like a better experience. So what started off as just kind of a whim has really grown into something here. And I think we're going to lean into that and develop it further. Very cool. Yeah. Okay. So I believe the polyverse is real. Having said that, how can you explain all of us being connected and we all being one? This comment was many minutes ago, and I'm pretty sure that with my conversation addressing some of Kevin's questions, this was resolved and addressed. If you still have questions about it, throw another comment in there, but I think we talked about it. I think we got that pretty clear. What if some of us shift into other realities often? I'd say that's evidence of the polyverse for sure, and hopefully you're enjoying them. I personally also shift into other realities from time to time. It's getting a little late in the stream for me to start talking about some of my multiverse, polyverse, multi-density, dimensional travels, but that's coming. I want to share some of the stuff, some of the spaces that I have found. But I feel like in order to talk about that, I had to talk about the polyverse first, because otherwise, if we weren't on the same page about the polyverse, you could look at what I'm saying or hear what I'm saying and say, no, Josiah, you're wrong, right? And be completely unavailable to hear it, right? But if we have this shared common foundation of the polyverse, now really anything that I say about, gamma brainwave state and travel that I've experienced, you can say, well, that's part of his truths. And you can either be curious about it or not, but it is not a right or wrong thing, right? It's now that's part of Josiah's truths. And I'm either curious about it and want to know more, or I'm not curious about it and we'll click off, right? Like, yeah. So it kind of sets a framework for having, oh my God, it's so freeing and enriching of a perspective. And so that's why I was so excited to bring it through. Reality shifting has gained traction over the last several years. Zach, we got to talk about that. Probably not tonight, but we got to talk about reality shifting because I'm aware of that movement too, and I've been talking to Shweta about it. I don't know if Shweta's on tonight on the comments, but she also has some very fascinating perspectives about reality shifting. So maybe I'll have her on and we can have a conversation about it with you all about reality shifting. It's quite fascinating, particularly in the polyversal perspective. Are we connected, or is that just my reality? Yeah, we are. Everything is consciousness, right? So by the very nature of everything being consciousness, we are connected, and we are still all one thing. That is, there's. So, I think we would get into a little bit more distinction here and talk about certain things that are, so it's infinite truths, right? And they're all true. And also some of those infinite truths we could consider to be fundamental. Okay. So I would consider the fact that everything is consciousness to be fundamental. Now, that doesn't mean that every other sentient being sees that as true, right? But it's like one of those things where whether they see that as their current truth or not, it's still a truth. So it's fundamental. I don't know. It's not perfect as a model, but it's definitely expansive, right? So there's definitely some development that can be done here to really understand things more through the frame. But I love where your head's at. You're really leaning into this idea of like exploring, okay, in the polyverse, what is the nature of reality? And that's beautiful. Narumi, what a timely idea for Pluto entering Aquarius. If astrology is a language you choose to speak. I love everything about this comment, Narumi. I love everything about this comment. You're calling out something that is part of consensus reality. And you're also acknowledging that maybe not everybody's polyversal model of reality includes the language of astrology. And I even love that you called it a language. I think that's phenomenal. Is it a timely idea? So in my polyverse, I'm with you. I hear you. Astrology is not the first language I speak, but I'm aware of it. And it is part of my multilingual nature, right? So I'm with you. And great call out. All right, Frank's signing off. Have to go eat. We'll have him on in a couple weeks. Can't wait to hear your new news. Awesome. Santina, this is the essence of Gestalt therapy. That is a brand new word for me, or concept for me, Gestalt therapy. But it sounds like we've got the essence of it. So maybe this is a new set of words. Can do some research to understand Gestalt therapy more. But thank you for calling that out. The connectedness you're talking about reminds me of the law of divine oneness, Orlena. The polyverse is like patches on a quilt. Infinite facets, grace, yes. That's what I was seeing in my mind. I didn't have the words for it though. I was like, it's this thing and there's like these different ways to look at it. It's infinite, not even multifaceted. It's infinite faceted. Yes, that's the perfect way to say it. Thank you for that. Grace, you said well said. I'm saying well said. Yes. Thank you for telling me that. It's great. Absolutely. Having less split energy within my oneself. Being in integrity with my verse. It's a great way to say that. Yeah. Yeah. That's the nature of this concept. Yeah. Does the Mandela effect come into play in polyverse? Oh, it does, Jackie. It does. Okay, so this is what I'm going to say about this without going too far down this rabbit hole. This is what I would say. I feel that the model of the polyverse creates a foundation that explains the truth of the Mandela effect. Okay, so in the polyverse of infinite truths where everything is true and you can hold, what is true for you, one of those truths is the Mandela effect. So it's like it opens up the possibility of the truth of the Mandela effect. So it's like it's almost like it paves the road for that conversation of the Mandela effect. Like if the Mandela effect is a conversation, like what paves that road is this idea of the polyverse. So you could build a theory of Mandela effect upon the polyverse, right? Law of divine oneness is what I'm talking about, Orlena says. Awesome. Polyverse is basically drinking water and minding our own business. Yes, Roxy. Drinking water and minding our own business. I love that. That's the perfect way to say it. That made me laugh. That's awesome. Galileo was the one who was arrested, or Sonia says. Galileo was sentenced to house arrest for his theory. Yes. If so, I guess I'm there and I didn't know. You are me both. Okay. I feel like there's some autocorrect that is not all that correct. But hey, so it is. Little baby Neville. Yeah, quite possibly, right? I was astonished to hear that answer from her. Oh, that record is locked, Josiah. What does that even mean? But yeah, little baby Neville. You are not deleting Mystery School. No, Bonnie, just the podcast. Although if you are like, no, if you are using it if you're listening to it as a podcast and not on YouTube, then let me know, because maybe you need to archive it instead of delete it. But I'm just saying, I will continue Sunday Mystery School on YouTube and then make Neville and Chill the podcast. That's what I was saying. So hopefully, yeah, let me know. Moon Bunny, oh darn, I'm late. Thankfully there's a replay available. Yeah, you're going to love this one, Moon Bunny. I think Neville shifted often. He did. He told a lot of stories about shifting. In dream, in meditation, in the hypnagogic state. He is shifting all over. He is shifting all over the place. That's a fun way to say it. I'd love to hear your takes on reality transurfing. It sounds connected. Quite possibly, yes. I am un poco familiar with reality shifting. I've listened to some of the key ideas. Or, I'm sorry, reality transurfing. I've listened to some of the key ideas, but I haven't dove a whole lot into it. But yes, it's from what I've seen so far, it's very connected to the mystic and Neville view of the universe. I had a mystical experience, Francisco says, of seeing humanity go into space as astronauts. And then I shifted into a world of differently evolved astronauts whose knees bent the wrong way, and it didn't feel like a dream. That sounds like a shifting. Yes. It felt both wondrous and terrifying. Yeah. That sounds like more of a shifting, a viewing of a parallel reality. In my experience, viewing parallel realities, it feels less dreamlike. I mean, meaning, so, even reality, this reality, present, current, local reality can feel dreamlike, but not in the way that a dream of sleep feels dreamlike. You can still usually tell, right? But sometimes there's dreams that feel real, like this reality feels real. Kind of overlapping a bunch of words here. But yes, when it doesn't feel like a dream, it feels real. Sometimes that's a parallel reality and not just a... Okay, so the theory about dreams is that sometimes you can travel in them, and sometimes it's these little flashes of synapses that are defragging from your consciousness. So it's like you live a whole day, and then the end of your sleep-wake cycle. So you have the wake cycle, and then at the end of your wake cycle, your brain goes through a defragmenting. It's kind of a weird word for it, but like this process of defragmenting the sensory inputs of the day and the memories and everything that you learned and talked about and everything. It's like defragging and compartmentalizing and storing in long-term memory. And so sometimes that can create these little, when you have weird dreams that don't make any sense, sometimes that's what that is. I wouldn't necessarily say that you're traveling, you're just experiencing little hallucinations of your defragmenting process. And then there's other dreams that you feel like you definitely visited someplace. And so that, in my perspective, there's a distinction between those two things. Two different things happening during the sleep part of your cycle, but two different experiences. What is your primary language? Is a way for humans to collaborate or align? Or what are a few of your primary languages and truths? Oh, I like that, Elena. So now we're talking about how to build, because remember I was saying there's like this cutting edge science of how to build organizations under a polyversal model of reality. So now it's like, okay, yeah, hey, so let's find where our truths interrelate so that we can build a consensus and have a conversation. That's beautiful. Yeah. My mystical experience had a message. Is that Gödel's? Gödel's completeness theorem for first order logic and then make it an analogy for your self-concept. I don't know what that means, Francisco, but I like the way it feels energetically. So my intuition is telling me you're on the right track, even though I don't know that theorem. The energy of it feels aligned to me. So yeah, I mean, I feel there's some overlap in my polyverse and your polyverse there somehow. Yeah. I had a Mandela effect moment today. I thought Thanksgiving had always been the third Thursday, but apparently not. You're tripping me out. Is it not the third Thursday? Now you got me questioning too. Okay, now I don't know. Weird. Okay, interesting. Poly and revision. Poly and revision. So polyverse. So in the polyverse, one of your truths can be that consciousness is primary, and thus what you accept as being true in consciousness is then true. Okay, so revision, so you're revising the day to the ideal. That now in your polyverse now holds that is true, that what you revise it to now becomes the record, right? So it's like the polyverse paves the way for an understanding of how some of these truths are true. I hope that makes sense. Roxy says, why water, right? Drink water and mind your own business. Should be polyjuice. Yeah, okay. Galileo was also skeptical of materialism, but most people don't know that. Interesting. Okay. Love all of this, Narumi says. And I have a few things I could say about the limitations and possibilities of language. That sounds like a fascinating conversation. Yeah. I've spent many years struggling with internal consistency. Francisco says, me too. It can't really be done in language. I enjoy listening to your podcasts, Bonnie says, but what truly draws me in is your remarkable oratory skill and the way you simplify and bring clarity to Neville Goddard's teachings. Thank you. I appreciate that acknowledgement. I feel I continue to evolve in that ability. And I feel like every time that I practice it by going live and giving, like teaching, like I feel like it's a skill that I'm constantly developing. So looking back over my trajectory in my career, because I've been using oratory skills for as long as I can remember, I can definitely see a path of evolution and growth. So it's nice. It feels nice to be acknowledged in that way. And also it's my intention to continue to just get a little bit better every day at what I do. Sonia says, same for me too. Awesome. How much learning from previous lives do you think we remember in current incarnations? Like, how many times do you think you've discovered that consciousness is the ultimate reality? Griffin, I love this question. Also, Griffin, this might be the first time I've seen you in a Neville and Chill. And if so, or what, were you here last week? I feel like maybe I remember you being here last week, but either way, welcome back. How much learning? So this is, I feel that this is a game we play over and over and over again. It's the boomerang. It's, throwing the boomerang out into the darkness of forgetting and seeing how far we can go to the very furthest extent, knowing that it's a boomerang. And so every single time it will turn around and come back. That's the physics. So that's the physics of God. God is throwing, metaphorically speaking, an individual carnation into the void of forgetting, knowing that inevitably we will reach the very limit of contraction and forgetting and then turning around and coming back. And I've often pondered about how this brings God, that we all are, a level of joy that really is not experienceable in any other way. Choosing to forget, I I feel in my soul, the reason why we choose to forget is to experience all over again the joy of remembering. That is deeply satisfying to the one divine God that we all are. And I feel in my soul that this is, if there's a reason why we do anything, if there's a reason why we exist, if there's a reason why we incarnate and have experiences, and there's a reason why there is a polyverse, and I'm not saying there is a reason, but if there is a reason, I feel it has something to do with this game that we're playing with ourselves. Let's see how much we can forget by throwing this boomerang, knowing that inevitably we always return back to source. It's beautiful. It's an awesome game. I love it. I love playing this game. People are talking about Thanksgiving online. Many of us remember it as the third Thursday, but it's been the fourth since 1939 or 1940. Okay. I don't really know what to think about that. I will accept it though. Sure. Wow. Okay. Josiah, would love future distinctions regarding night, dreams, and also glitches, examples of. Yeah, let's do that, Jackie. Yeah. So I have a couple guests coming. The next solo stream, now that we've laid the foundation of the polyverse, the next solo stream, we will dive into some of these discussions and distinctions, because I think there's a lot to explore here. And I think Neville and Chill is the perfect space to do so. Awesome. I appreciate how you repeat sentences and phrases in your Neville readings. Also, I am lulled to sleep hearing you. Okay, so yeah. So the repeating sentences thing, I just want to tell this. I think this is funny. So when I first discovered Neville and I was listening to his own words, like his recordings, he would say these things and my mind would just explode. And so I kept constantly, I'm like tapping the screen, you know how you like double tap to go back 10 seconds? I would end up, some of the things he would say, I would go back and hear him say it again and again and again and again. My mind is just like, because I'm downloading, he's saying words, right? But there's this psychic download of consciousness expansion happening. And so I like him, he just throws it out casually because this is just Neville and he's just this, very godly man with this incredibly enlightened consciousness. So to him, it's normal. To me at that stage in particular, I was like, so I kept having to rewind. And so when I started reading it for my channel, that was my logic. I was like, and I could feel the vibration when I said something that was truly like, boom. Just my instinct was, I have to say that again, because the power in it can really only be recognized if there's a little bit of space for it. And that's also why when I first started reading, I would say these things and then I'd like leave these long gaps. And some people kind of complained about that. They're like, you're quiet for 10 seconds. And then I'm wondering, like, did the video stop? Did something break? And so it became distracting, so I stopped doing the long gaps. But originally I was like, I just dropped like through the words of Neville, through my voice, just dropped some serious knowledge here, like a serious expansion, a little boom, explosion of consciousness. So I need to like give it some space to really land, so that was like, so yeah, so it was just this very intuitive, natural thing. And it's one of the things that a lot of people over the years have said to me, this really helped me. Also reading slower, again, honoring like the fact that there's consciousness expansion. This is not knowledge transfer. This is words creating space for a download, right? Because it's not me telling you something as much as it is the words creating a vibration that opens a window in your own awareness to know the truth for yourself. That's what's happening. This is not a book about, how to build a business or how to play soccer, right? This is you becoming aware of the awareness that you are. So it's not a knowledge transfer. It's a expansion of awareness. So that's why the slower pace, the repetition, the pauses, like that was just a very intuitive to my style to like really coming from this place of seeking to be a wise steward of the power of these words, and also a graceful vessel for something so consciousness expanding. Yeah. So I'm glad you like that. And the whole falling asleep thing is not actually, I laugh about it, but it's not really a bad thing, because sometimes if our conscious mind shuts down, our subconscious mind can absorb more. I know there was, and I'm not the only one. Many people told me this. There was, for several years, there was, night after night after night, I would have a Neville recording, either in my own voice or in his voice, just depending on what it was, playing in my headphones all night long as I slept, for that reason, because I knew that it was this absorption happening in my deeper awareness. And I would have the wildest dreams listening to the words of Neville. You can imagine, right? I'd have the wildest dreams. So that's really cool. Yeah. Okay. A few more comments here, and then we're going to wrap up here. Bonnie says, the polyverse suggests the belief that in a God outside oneself is just as valid for some as the understanding of Christ consciousness is for others. That's a valid point, Bonnie. Yes. It is just as valid because it's the polyverse. So it's infinite truths, and we choose what is true for us. So, some of these people, like, okay, so I'll give an example. It's pretty close to home. So I have family members who very much believe in an external God. And my family members, right, from my family of origin. So like my perspective on things is super foreign to them, and they to date have not wanted to talk about it, because to them, my perspective is very outside of the realm of what they have been. By the way, side note, I always like to time shift when I tell stories, like time shift. So far, have been, as opposed to speaking as though it's a current reality, right? It's a little trick, and I just wanted to call it out, because all of us can do this. We can describe the way that things have been without declaring that they are currently that way. I call that time shifting. Elena, add that to our glossary, okay? Time shifting. So it's subtle use of language to imply the opportunity for a new possibility, okay? So far, they have not been interested, right? But I'm not saying they are not interested, because that is speaking into reality a truth, okay? But that's not what I'm doing. When I'm time shifting, I'm saying my experience to date. So I'm still being honest about my experience. My experience to date has been that they have not, implying in the past, been interested in hearing about this. But I'm not speaking a spell of it continuing to be that way, right? So same thing, when owning a limitation, I can say, so far in my life, I have struggled with X, Y, and Z, as opposed to saying, I am this way, or I am in a place of struggle. I'm saying, so far I've struggled. So I'm owning, and I'm being honest and authentic without speaking a spell and using the name of God in vain. See what I'm saying? So time shifting, add that to the glossary. Okay, so getting back to what you're saying, Bonnie. Yes, so for them, these family members, in particular, these two people that I'm thinking about, they live a very Christ-like life. One of them in particular, who I know better than the other, has really been, he's a very Christ-like individual. And really sometimes I just am like in awe, and also believes fully that Christ is like this external being that's going to come back in the clouds, right? But that doesn't change the fact that he's living Christ-like in his life, right? So yes, the polyverse, yes, absolutely. Yes, to him, that's very real, and it's his truth. And to me, I have a very different truth, but we're both seeking to live a Christ-like life, right? So it's like we have common truths, even though some of our truths are different. So I like this comment is very illuminating, and I love the place from which it's coming. Like, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something really certainly remarkable about that. Yeah. I have trouble sleeping. Your voice just helps. Awesome. All right, cool. So if you like my voice for sleeping, you might also like my older brother's band called Nap Party. You can find his music on Spotify. It's a nap party. I have at least one friend who I told that, and she had a young son who would sometimes struggle with sleeping, and she started using that as his nap time music to lull him to sleep. So that's my older brother, has a band called Nap Party, and his music is on Spotify. So check that out. It's like keeping in the family, right? Neville was dropping gems like it was nothing. Totally, Natisha. Absolutely. Electrocuted into repetition. Exactly. I got to say that again. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. We got all kinds of new people on tonight. I love you all. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad you showed up for the Polyverse discussion, because this is just phenomenal. Arnab says, thank you so much, Josiah. Your explanation of Neville is too good. I finished all his books previous year with your readings of some of his books. Thank you so much. Love, Arnab. Appreciate you, Arnab. Thank you for that acknowledgement. I also hope you're really enjoying Sunday Mystery School, live every Sunday at noon. Deep dive into the Masterclass. It's really a labor of love, and I hope you're enjoying that as well. In addition to the books, the exploration, the community, the discussion, all that, it's super, super valuable. Yeah, we'll be digging into dreams. What if one has lost the ability to dream? Does that mean our multiversal selves and alternate realities are passing away? Oh my goodness. What a comment. Okay. We're going to have to save that one for our next. I mean, wow. Okay. Hold on. Let me read that again. I got electrocuted into repetition. No, but wow. What? Okay. All right. That's definitely a conversation for another time. Amazing question. You literally just blew my mind. Yes. Arnab, have you experienced the promise yet, Josiah? Yes, I have experienced the promise. Several of them. That's another video that, I mean, we got a whole list of them coming. I'd like to share my experience. In my polyversal understanding of reality, the experience of the promise is unique to the individual. Neville really taught it from a biblical perspective, and we're going to talk about how that works. Like, so the Bible's the prophecy, and then we experience it, but yet it's unique to us, and maybe not like the prophecy, but yet maybe the elements of the prophet. Because how would we know that the prophecy is fulfilled if we experience the promise, but it has nothing to do with the prophecy? Right. So like there's some reconciling to happen there. Personally, my experience of the promise, the events that I've experienced that Neville describes as being the promise, there's a series of them. I've had a few of the series. There's one I'm aware of that has not manifested for me yet. I think I'm still in the timeline. But yeah, so there's a whole discussion here. But the way that I experienced it, it was not exactly as Neville describes it, but close enough that I could point to the scripture and say, this was a prophecy for me. Okay. I could point to what is supposed to be like the whole point is that it's supposed to break the fourth wall. Okay. So it's like, you know that it's significant because there's this book that was written thousands of years ago about you. And you know it was written about you because you experience in living reality, like what was written, right? It comes alive for you. It's the living word of God, and it's made real for you directly, right? So yes, that happened for me, but I've also had people say, look, I experienced the promise and it was nothing like what Neville described. So I think there's some exploration there. And again, I'm not saying that they're wrong, because polyverse, right? It's their truth. So I would love to explore it. I'm curious about those truths and my truths and the Bible truths, and like really weaving together this beautiful tapestry of this polyversal reality that we're living in. Awesome. Gift Wrap says, made clear. Thanks. Very cool. I do so enjoy your readings of Neville. No one captures or conveys their essence and profundity quite the way that you do. Jackie, I love that comment, mostly because you used the word profundity, and that's one of the funnest words I know, profundity. Thank you for that. Your voice is a good thing. No negative intended compliment. Awesome. Yes. Soothing and put you to sleep. That and Nap Party. Next is for me to do a Neville reading with Nap Party as the backing track on a YouTube video. I'm sure some people will love that and some people will not love that. It'll be fun either way. The next book you should read for SMS is The Resurrection. That's a fantastic idea. Orlena, thank you for that. I just may do that because I do see a sting with the Neville theme, at least for a while. There is a chance that we will move on to other teachings as our source material, but I want to stay with them for a while. So maybe Resurrection is next. Can you speak on tithing? I have a traditional background and I am interested in understanding Neville's perspective. Deshaun, I think possibly you or someone else submitted this as a question for our question and answers session on Sunday Mystery School. So I'm planning on addressing it at length in an upcoming episode of Sunday Mystery School. What I will say, just out of honor for your presence and the fact that you're asking, and I want to honor that by giving you a response right now. Meaning I will expand upon it more in a future episode of Sunday Mystery School, but I just want to address it right now. What Neville said is that tithing is not an external requirement levied upon us, but rather something that if we choose to do it, great, do it. And if we choose not to do it, great, don't do it. But whether you do it or not, don't think that it is some external requirement being levied on you. That's the shortest possible exploration of it. There's also a metaphysical interpretation of tithing that gets into this idea of, it takes it a whole different definition. So let's define tithing. So you said traditional background. So I'm assuming you are speaking of tithing as the Catholic and Protestant and maybe other religions. I don't know. I'm not aware. Of 10% of your income given to the church. Okay. That's a fantastic arrangement for the church. Okay. And these churches amassed obscene wealth, incredible, vast, astonishing levels of wealth by implying that that's an external requirement placed upon human beings, churchgoers, Christians, people of faith. Okay. So it definitely served their interest to teach that. But Neville really poked a hole in that and said, no, that's really their scheme. I'm not going to judge their motives. I'm just saying that it definitely generated in vast wealth for them, and they definitely were incentivized to teach it as a requirement. Okay. And Neville poked a hole in that and said, no, it's not. But he also said, do it or don't do it. It's up to you. Now I'm going to give my take on it. I live in a state of wealth and abundance. And part of how I know that I'm in the state of wealth and abundance, and this is my polyversal truth, okay? Part of how I know that is my generosity. So for me, tithing is not a requirement, but rather, I do tithe, I do give monthly a percentage of my income to things that I believe in, but it's not because I feel that it is an external requirement levied upon me, but rather because it's an element of how I celebrate my wealth and abundance. I rejoice that I have this perpetual cash flow that comes into my sphere of influence every month, continuously, perpetually, and that I get to give freely of it and support causes that I believe in. Okay. So that's my perspective on it. Tithing feels so heavy as a word. I would just call it generosity, right? Just generosity and giving freely. Okay. So I hope that's helpful in some way. And we will go deeper into the more that and also the more metaphysical thing more metaphysical interpretation of it when we get to that episode, the question and answer session on Sunday Mystery School, which of course I have to remind you all, if you have questions about Sunday Mystery School stuff that you would like to have explored in that setting, make sure you drop them in that Google form. The Google form is the first thing at the top of the Sunday Mystery School YouTube video descriptions. And you can submit as many questions as you want. Okay. We've been going for more than 2 hours here, and I love how interactive you all are. I'm going to start to wrap up now. I'm going to take a quick look at your comments and see if there's anything that I can call out. But we are moving towards a close here. So let's see. Jackie says, I can't wait for the dream discussion. It's going to be good. Yes, it's coming. Dr. Strange, Multiverse of Madness. Curious about our multiversal selves passing away. I'll ask again in the future. Yes, let's bring that to the dream conversation. Can you talk about reality transurfing by Vadim Zeeland? Yes, let's make that a future topic. Like I said, I'm a little bit educated. I will educate myself in it further, and let's bring that. Let's literally do I think even from an SEO perspective, there's a lot of people that are in that way of thinking that would enjoy a Neville and Chill style discussion of it. So let's bring that forward. Spend 10% of your time imagining wisely for others. Neville would say that's more like 90%. He says when you really reach the ultimate state, you start to understand that what you're imagining for others is what you're imagining for yourself, because you start to see the others as yourself. So, but yes, I like 10% is a great place to start, but eventually it becomes close to 100% according to Neville. Billy Graham, Neville spoke of him. Our real belief. Ooh. I am going to jot that down because it's not that often that I get a request like that for a specific lecture, and I love to make your dreams come true. Also, Kania, I remember you from a long time ago. You have been present in this community for a long time, so I want to acknowledge you for that. Thank you for being here for the whole journey, and to see you, 5 years later? I remember you back from 2019, 2020, you're like one of the OGs. So awesome. So glad you're here and doing well. And I would love to read our real belief. So I am writing that down. Thank you for that. We'll get on it. Awesome. Great teaching, Josiah. You are welcome. Giving freely. When's the dream conversation? Okay. So it'll be in December. It'll be in December. What am I going to title it? Elena, I feel like this is a job for you. What do I title the dream conversation? Just so that I can call it out, so that everybody knows when they see that little pop-up on their phone. This is the one. It's the dream conversation. Elena, that's you. You got to tell me what we're going to title that one. What is it with being the archivist of the glossary? What are we going to call the dream conversation? Portal of Reverie. Okay. Something about portal. Okay. So when you see the notification, I don't know if it's going to be Portal of Reverie. It might be the portal, portals and dreams, something like that. Dreams and reality portal, something like that. When you see that pop up, then you know that's going to be the one. So we're doing this every Tuesday. It's rare that I miss one. I don't plan to ever miss one. I'll continue to do them. I don't always schedule them in advance though. So just know Tuesday night is Neville and Chill night, where you come and feed that sapio part of your awareness and really satisfy the part of your intellectual that you can really only satisfy with these mind expanding conversations. 5 years. Yeah. Kania. Awesome. So cool to have you back. Or have you with us? Not even back, but obviously you've just been here. So awesome. Thank you for being here. Was it Edward Art who saw Neville talking to him in his dream? I don't know. I'm aware of Edward Art, and I'm aware he has, I'm aware he has amazing content, but I haven't heard him talking about a dream. I have experienced Neville in a dream. I've told that story. Yes, he talked to me. He walked me into a garden, and he taught me some really beautiful, amazing things. Yes. And I think that that was induced by listening to him as I was falling asleep, listening to his voice. Okay. That's going to do it, my friends. This was such an engaging conversation tonight. Thank you all for being here for it, being on the same wavelength. Like we had this energy going. This is, it's a conversation, whether you're in the chat or not, even those of you that are listening to the replay, like you're here in this space, your energy is very palpable and present. And so I just want to thank you and acknowledge all of you for bringing such an amazing open-mindedness and holding a space to go as deep as we went tonight into these really expansive, freeing ideas, freeing the mind, freeing our awareness, freeing our consciousness. This is so powerful, this idea of the polyverse. Thank you for being here for it and holding the space for really going deep. Thank you for everybody in the chat. I love you all. This is an amazing community. I say it every time because it's true and I mean it. You all are literally the best. So much appreciation for all of you. Thank you for being here, being a part of the community. Really looking forward to seeing you all for the next episode of Sunday Mystery School on Sunday. And we'll be back next Tuesday with Tamer talking about consciousness technology. Dracarius, definitely check out the replay. It was, I think you're really going to love it. Until next time, imagine wisely, my friends, and I will see you all in the next. Good night, everyone.